Hey everyone, I'm about to take you on another journey of treachery, betrayal, and malicious collusion in which the public were used as executioner of the target. Hi, I'm Diana Davison. For the last year, I've been following the social death of a celebrated Canadian author, former chair of creative writing at University of British Columbia, Steven Galloway. In November of 2015, Steven Galloway was suspended from his position at UBC, pending an investigation into, quote-unquote, serious allegations. That phrase, mixed with an expressed concern for student safety, resulted in the public perception that Mr. Galloway was some sort of threat to women on campus, and most likely a sexual menace in general. Former Supreme Court Judge Mary Ellen Boyd was hired to do an independent investigation of the allegations against Mr. Galloway. Her report concluded that only one allegation could be substantiated, that Mr. Galloway had violated UBC policy by engaging in a sexual relationship with a student. While this is a violation of policy, Steven Galloway's resulting termination from a tenured position in June of 2016 was seen by the union as disproportionate. In June, complainants began engaging with the media to divulge information about the accusations. Friends and colleagues of Mr. Galloway's attempted to balance that information, as Galloway was unable to make statements himself until his grievance with the university is heard and decided. Over the last few months, enough information has been divulged, spattered about the internet in a wide array of articles and social media, that a clear picture can be obtained. It is not the picture that Steven Galloway's accusers want you to believe. I'm going to present to you the information that should not be lost in the sea of screaming ideologues. In the beginning, prior to any allegations being made against Steven Galloway, UBC had a lot of heat on them due to their mishandling of sexual assault complaints against a PhD history student named Dmitry Mordvinov. CBC's Fifth Estate was releasing a program called School of Secrets at the end of November of 2015. At the beginning of November, after Mordvinov had been discussed in mainstream media for around 6 months, and UBC was under a lot of pressure to explain how that case had been handled, the main complainant against Steven Galloway wrote a letter to UBC expressing her thoughts on how UBC handled sexual assault. The contents of that letter, and Galloway's recognition of the person who wrote it as a student that he'd had an affair with, caused him to panic, and he phoned the woman concerned that she was going to expose their prior relationship. He left 2 phone messages, and she did not return his calls. Galloway has admitted that he had a sexual relationship with one of his students for approximately 2 years in 2011. The relationship did not end well. Galloway didn't report his relationship to UBC as required. This failure to report was likely due to the fact that Galloway was married at the time of the affair. The student was also in a long-term relationship, so neither one of them would have gained from a disclosure. The student was, to some degree, vulnerable to Mr. Galloway because he was in a position of authority, but as we can clearly see at this moment in time, Mr. Galloway was extremely vulnerable to the student because at any time she could disclose their relationship and his employment could be terminated or negatively impacted. So I don't want to get into speculating heavily on how this relationship impacted either party emotionally while it lasted or when it ended, but it's reasonable to expect emotional turbulence on the part of the student because her lover was married, and emotional turbulence when it ended, most likely weighing more heavily on the side of the student. Steven Galloway and his wife at the time ended up divorcing, so let's not pretend that Galloway just dumped her and carried on as if nothing happened. There is some concern that the student dropped her pursuit of creative writing as a result of this affair. None of this woman's advocates have made that claim, but potentially that is part of her complaint. But remember that the main complainant is not a young woman just beginning her career ambitions. She was in her 40s. She was a mature student. That she didn't file a complaint when the relationship ended does not mean that she didn't suffer from the unfolding of the affair. That she filed her grievance when sexual assault became a public concern at UBC does not mean that she made up a story for attention. But also remember that in terms of power, this woman had the ability to destroy Steven Galloway's career the moment he had sex with her. And she has since done so. So let's not be blinkered when we talk about power. I think that is a fair and balanced discussion in terms of Steven's choice to have an affair with one of his students. He acknowledges that it was a mistake, and it was. As the main complainant has recently said in a statement through her lawyer, her complaint was not just about an affair. She has said that she was sexually assaulted by Mr. Galloway as well. The Honorable Mary Ellen Boyd investigated that complaint and found that it could not be substantiated. The main complainant has not spoken to the media about the details of her allegations, nor has Mr. Galloway, and I do not wish to pry into the substance of that complaint right now. I'm going to look instead at how the main complainant brought her allegations to the attention of UBC and how the method chosen was an absolute violation of Steven Galloway's rights. The completely inappropriate meeting between faculty and students. The main complainant wrote a letter to then president of UBC, Martha Piper, as well as writing to a faculty member of the creative writing department. The complainant told this faculty member to contact another student named Chelsea Rooney for details and consultation. Ms. Rooney has been very vocal on social media using her real name and offering a number of interviews to media, so I feel no compulsion to protect Chelsea Rooney's name, nor her statements and actions in the unfolding of these events. I believe Ms. Rooney is acting out of legitimate concern for her friend, though I think her actions have been ill-tempered by her emotional involvement in the situation. Instead of directing complaints to the appropriate department, faculty members held a meeting at a private residence to discuss allegations against their colleague. Annabelle Lyon, Linda Svensson, and at least one other faculty member should be suspended right now for participating in this private meeting, and also assigning students roles in the gathering of evidence against Steven Galloway. Instead of being investigated by the University of British Columbia for their role in gathering of complaints against their colleague, Lyon and Svensson were instead promoted to co-chairs of the creative writing department, the same day Steven Galloway was suspended. So let's look at what they did. A meeting was held with at least 3 faculty members to speak with student Chelsea Rooney and possibly with another student, Sierra Sky Gemma, in attendance. Ms. Gemma has also been very publicly outspoken on the Galloway complaints and plays a big role in the misconduct about to take place. At a private residence, UBC faculty discussed with students how they might gather more accusations, collect the complaints, and initiate employment action against their colleague Steven Galloway. The faculty seemed aware that they themselves couldn't go around approaching students on the issue, so they had a letter drafted by Sara-Jane Finley, who should also be suspended, that Chelsea Rooney could hand out to other students that Rooney thought might be willing to make a complaint. From a story in the Globe and Mail. Ms. Rooney, an alumna, was tasked to do it, given a memo to hand out to others she believed had complaints. Quote, "You are receiving this letter from me because the person delivering it to you thinks you may have a complaint against Professor Steven Galloway," began the memo from Sara-Jane Finley, the university's Associate Vice President of Equity and Inclusion. The memo promised, quote, "confidentiality will be maintained as much as possible." And it concluded, quote, "We understand how challenging this may be for you to come forward. We honor your strength and will do our utmost to support you in this process." Meanwhile, Ms. Gemma, who worked in a financial office at UBC, used her position to do detective work on Galloway's financial requisitions. I kid you the fuck not. Rooney and Gemma are 2 of the ancillary complainants in the Galloway investigation, and they were turned into detectives in their own complaint. So, a complainant abused her position to dig through Galloway's personnel files, and she did this on instruction from Steven Galloway's colleagues. Who gave her this request? They had to have known that she was a complainant, and they had to know it was wrong. About Sierra Sky Gemma, the Globe tells us, she was employed by the creative writing program in an administrative role, financial processing specialist, when Mr. Galloway was suspended. So I'm going to leave today's video here. The next step in this travesty will blow your mind. But for now, be aware that Chelsea Rooney handed Finley's letter to at least 19 students. That is 19 times that Galloway's rights were violated. Sierra Sky Gemma took advantage of her access to Galloway's financial records and dug through them like a spy on a CIA mission. To the best of my knowledge, neither of these violations resulted in anything of use to the cabal set on destroying Mr. Galloway's life. When the CanLit community recently wrote an open letter demanding an investigation into UBC's handling of accusations against Steven Galloway, do not be misled that they are trying to silence accusers. The public needs to know how Annabelle Lyon, Linda Svensson, and Sara-Jane Finlay got away with their misconduct.